this Thursday evening here in Hamburg, Germany, maybe afternoon where you're living, or maybe even morning, just depending on where you are in the world today. So my name is Sarah Newman, and I'm delighted to be with you for this Altenew Live. And we should be, fingers crossed, streaming in Facebook as well as YouTube. So I'll be really happy to see folks jumping in. It looks like I've just had a connection issue, so hopefully we are coming in. If you can post a comment, let me know if we are coming into you, if you can see or comment. And if not, oh, it looks like we've got some messages coming in. Good, good, good. That's a relief. I never like to see that connection issues message popping in there. Oh, yay. Okay, I can see we've got Stacy, we've got Sue, we've got the fabulous Fabrizio. Wonderful to see you joining us. Jill and Cece and Fran. Lynn, looks good and can see you, says Lynn. Thank you. Those are two really important things. Nancy, Maggie, Paula, really nice to see everybody. So thank you for clicking in and for joining us today. So I'm excited because we're not only in two places at one time, which is like my dream in life, but that we're also able to do some different camera work this time. So I'll be excited to see how that goes. The lovely Kathleen is behind the badge with us today, and she's already reminded everybody, don't forget to share today's video, and you could be in for a $15 gift certificate to the Altenew store if she pulls your name from the batch of shared comments. So if you would give us a share and then let us know, then you will be in for that. And it looks like we've had even more folks joining us from New Zealand and from Norway and from Virginia, New York. Looks fantastic. So I'm really glad that everyone is here and excited to play with you guys today. Okay, so the stamp set that we're going to be working with today is the Crown Bloom, and I'm going to kind of try and hold this so that you can see it really well. What we've got here is a really gorgeous layering stamp, a really nice large blossom, and you can see it probably best right down here at the bottom. So this is a large flower. This is about, I'm going to say about 3 inches, maybe 3¼ inches from the widest part to the other widest part. So basically what you've got here is the main blossom. Then right above, you've got your kind of middle layer. This top area here is your detail layer. So when you're stamping all of these together, you're going to get a really beautiful, colorful effect. Now there are also down here 2 sections for this sort of centerpiece of the flower. And it looks a lot more, it makes a lot more sense if you can see the completed image here. So you can see where that beautiful shading is coming in, and also where your layering guide will be here too. Not only do we have the flower, but we've also got a big, beautiful leaf on there as well. The same layering process will also apply here. So you have your silhouette or your outline image, your kind of innie silhouette, and then this funny looking one here is your detail. So you've got 3 layers there. Here in the center, we've got a standalone kind of like flower filler, if you will. If I hold it up, you can see it really well. It's just a beautiful design that kind of goes with everything. Now we've also got to go along a Crown Bloom die set. So this is going to give you the shape for the flower, for that filler piece, for the leaf, and then also for this little tiny baby leaf on here too. So that is the main collection. Now you'll notice we don't have any sentiments or words on the stamp set. So I decided to add in the many thanks stamp set here for my messages. It's always good to have a good basic stamp, thanks stamp set on hand. So this is one that I really, really like. The designs are really quite petite, so they work nicely in balance with our large flower. Because sometimes if you have a large flower and then you've got a large sentiment, it can be tricky to fit them both in there. So this is going to give us a nice balanced effect on here. Okay, now I've also got some stripes going on here in the background of my card. This is from one of my favorite stencils. Probably one of my favorite stencils in my collection from anywhere. And this is the beach towel stripes. And we're going to do 3 different ways to get stripes for our cards. 2 are going to involve this stencil. So we're going to be balancing our stripes and our floral motif, which is a really good kind of basic design principle too. If you're ever looking for something to do in the background of a floral card, putting a geometric like a stripe is always a good design balance. So that's kind of why, like in bedding stores, they'll have like a duvet set that has a striped comforter with floral pillows or so on. So the 2 balance each other design-wise really nicely. So we're going to take advantage of that, borrow that design technique for our cards today. So I figure what we can do now is going to tilt down my camera so that we can take a look at my work surface. Here we go. Just a portion of my very full work surface, I have to add. I think I'm like most crafters in that everything outside of the camera angle is just as full of crafting supplies as the inside of my camera spot. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start working on this card here and take a look at the various techniques. So we're going to start with our blossom in the center and doing our layering, and then I'll talk about this background here. So I'm going to grab my Misty, and this is going to help me a lot when I'm doing my layering. You can use a plain acrylic block for this. I recommend if you have a stamp positioner, take advantage of it because it really does make the whole process a little bit easier. Okay, I'm going to get some blank, smooth white cardstock here and pop this down into place. Okay, I think you can see everything there. I'm going to start out doing the outline of my flower, and I'm going to be using the Obsidian Pigment ink. This is, I know many of you get tired of me saying this, this is my go-to stamping ink for black, and that's what I'm going to start out with for my main image here. So I'm just going to grab my flower and pop it down here. I'm going to try and fit on both the flower and the leaf, so that I can show those both to you on one piece. So scoop my magnet up here, move some things around. It's not like there's more space to be acquired, but I'll just sort of shift things around a little bit, ink this up, and give this a stamp. And there you can see beautiful, crisp, clean design. Now, what I also like about this is that you could very easily, if you do colored pencils, if you do markers, you could also simply use this as it is. And Altenew stamps are good in their ability to be flexible in that respect. So very often you can sort of stop with any of the layering process and do some different things with it. Okay, so now I'm going to move to my second layer. So I'm going to keep this in place and move to this middle layer here. And here's where I'm going to bring in some of my colored inks. I'm going to fit this into place first of all, and make sure that I can get this positioned. And I just need to work with my top and my bottom edges on here, and the rest will sort of fall into place. So I make sure that I've got that where I want it to go, and then I'll be ready to ink this up. Now I know that I want to have 2 pink colors in this main area and then some yellow in here. So I need a light pink for my larger portion of my stamp and then a darker pink for my highlights. And so for my lighter pink, I'm going to use the pink pearl. And those of you in the US probably remember, maybe I'm sure they still have them, the pink pearl eraser. That was always on the shopping list for back to school. And this pink is the pink of a pink pearl eraser. So I'm wondering if the Altenew people, if they knew that and that's what it's named after. Brings back memories. Okay, so I've got my pink pearl on here. And I always like to do a second round, actually, with my lighter colors, just to make sure that I've got a nice, rich color. Okay, there we go. So I've got my pink pearl. And then I can come back with my next layer, which is going to be this detail. And for this one, I want a darker color, a darker shade of pink. So I'm going to get this situated here. And make sure I've got this where I want it to be. There we go. And for this layer, I'm going to go with a shade darker. And for this, I'm going to use the Coral Berry. So I have my pink pearl as my first layer, Coral Berry as my second layer. These two together work just beautifully, by the way. So this is a really nice color combination for lots of your flower layering techniques. Okay. And then pop this into place. So there you can see how we get that beautiful color and shading in there. It's just such a gorgeous look. And again, this could be a part where you stop. Maybe you say that this is good. You could stamp something, a sentiment here in the open space, or you could die cut this. You could call it good right here, but we will keep on going. So I want to add a little bit more color here in the center. And for that, I'm going to need these two elements down here. So this kind of funny half circle is going to fit right in here. And then this will be the detail of that. So I'm going to start with the darker of the two. And again, just kind of fit that in, following the lines. And with this one, I want to have a nice contrast, so I'm going to use some yellow. Just nudge that into place. And the yellow I'm going to start with is one of my favorite yellows, which is the Fresh Lemon. You have to love the names of the ink pads. I wonder whose job it is to name them. Okay, so I'm going to just pop this down. And there you go. So you've got a nice little pop of contrasting color in there. And now to add the shading, that's going to be this portion right here. Grab that and same process. So it's not a really intricate layering procedure. It's actually quite simple and works just beautifully. I'll get that into place. Now I do want a darker color of yellow. And for this one, I'm going to go with the Honey Drizzle. So I have my Fresh Lemon as my lighter color, and Honey Drizzle is going to be my accent. So slightly darker. And that's just to give a little bit of shadow effect in there. Okay, and there we go. There is the completed flower. Really quick and really easy. And again, you can see in proportion to my hand that this is a fairly substantial size of design, which means that you've got an instant card focal, and it's going to make it really easy to design around this. So here's the flower. Now what I'm going to do is scoot this around And I want to also show you the leaf and how that gets layered. Looks like I've got a little something on there, but we'll work around it. So the leaf is done in exactly the same format, except it's only 3 layers. So I've got the outline here, I've got the second layer here, and then I've got this kind of funny third layer in here as well. Now wait till I show you this leaf, because the leaf is beautiful and I think would be absolutely stunning just by itself. I'm thinking autumn leaves for a fall card. I think you could do so many different beautiful effects with just this leaf. Okay, and again, inking it up with my obsidian. Take a look. You can really appreciate it once you see it stamped out. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's so big and pretty. Looks like it's falling. So I can envision autumn themed looks with this, but we're going to keep it with our flower for now. And I'm going to work in the second section. So this area here will be my lighter of my 2 green colors, and then this detail area will be in the darker of the colors. So let me grab the middle layer first, and we'll pop that in place. And with this one, I find in terms of lining it up, it helps to start at one end of the leaf, so like the tip of the stem, and then align the tip of the leaf itself. So from here to here, just kind of arranging those as your orientation points. And for this, I'm going to start with bamboo. This is going to be the lighter of my 2 colors. So this is what I'm going to do my filler with. Bamboo is a favorite color of mine, although I have to say it's hard to pick with the Altenew inks. Lots of different beautiful shades. Okay, so there's my bamboo. And again, like I did with the pink pearl, I'm going to ink this up a second time, just for a little extra saturation. So there you can see that bright, fresh color. Jill says she loves the leaves. I do too. I think they're gorgeous. Okay, I'm just going to mop that one up and then bring back my final layer here, which is this really funny looking piece. Now this one, when I line it up, I want to be a little bit careful. I want to start up at the tip of the leaf, so this little pointy bit, and then kind of let it scoot along the center of the flower, or center of the leaf, sorry. If you try and line it up down at the bottom, it throws you off a little bit. So this is my trick for getting things into place. As usual, there's that little bit of scooching that you need to do. The scooch factor. Okay, so I've got this. Now I'm going to use a darker color, and in this case, I'll use Forest Glades. So I have bamboo as my lighter, and Forest Glades is going to be the darker of my colors. And ink this up. And there we go. So here's where you can really start to see how beautiful that leaf is with all of that shading and highlighting in there. I'm gonna pull this off and give you a little bit of a closer look, since I'm able to do this without the camera going all wonky, I think. So you can see that big, beautiful flower, big, beautiful leaf, and how easily those can be layered up. Okay, so for my original card, all I would need to do then is, of course, just die cut those elements using the coordinating dies. But I also want to show you this little filler piece here, because I think that this is one that can tend to get a little bit forgotten in competition with these 2 other gorgeous elements. So as I mentioned, it's this little standalone piece right here in the center. I'm going to pop this off. and also kind of nest this in here so that you can see this as well. I'm avoiding my little smudge mark on there at the bottom. And this one I'll just ink up with the obsidian so that you can see. It's just a really sweet little design. And like the leaf, it's one that you can sort of work in with lots of other different stamp sets too. So you can see, it's just a really sweet little posy effect. Now you could again also color this in with your colored pencils, with your water brush markers, with your artist markers. You can stamp and emboss this. This also looks really pretty embossed, and you can do some interesting things there as well. So this is all I did in terms of stamping and layering to create my card. So let's take another look at this. And you can see where those elements are coming from. So there's my nice big flower, my big beautiful leaf. So of course I stamped two so that I can kind of put those, one is pointing out this way and one is going this way. I have two of those little filler pieces here too, top and bottom. So coming out from the center of my flower, I've kind of got lots of different elements kind of guiding your eye in a circular formation. Now, what about the background? So the background is done with our beach towel stripes stencil. And I want to talk to you about this technique. This is a really fun way to get a different look from your stencils. And it's a reverse stenciling technique. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to bring in a piece of scrap paper here. And I am working on my Altenew craft mat just to protect everything. I've got my stencil. I'm going to have a water mister on hand. And I need, of course, a piece of cardstock. So just smooth white cardstock, the same stuff I'm stamping onto. And I also wanted some ink that will match my flower. So I'm going to go with the Vineyard Berry. So that's going to coordinate nicely with my two other pinks here. Something a little bit darker. I don't want something too light because I'm going to be adding water to this. Okay, I'm going to move some other paper items out of the way here. And keeping my scrap paper underneath my stencil, I'm going to just take this ink pad and I'm going to apply the ink onto the stencil. So normally we would try to go in between the lines of the stencil, but in this case, we want to get the ink onto the plastic itself. Now it's important that when you're doing this, you're using a dye-based ink because we're going to be using water to go along with this. And so what I'll do then is just give a few quick mists of water. And then I'm going to turn this over. So I'm working with a clean portion. You can see the water and the ink are kind of beating up together. Then I'm going to take my scrap paper, my regular paper, and hold this down at one end and then just press it on top. And I want to make sure that I'm making contact with the various portions of the stencil without the paper sliding around. So I'm going to keep holding on to the bottom and then just kind of lift this off. And then I've got a really pretty watercolor effect stripy background. Now this is a look that just is so easy to do, and you'll get a different effect every time depending on how much ink you use, how much water you use, how much pressure you use, and of course what kind of stencil you're using. This works great for any of your stencils that have a geometric or kind of maybe more of an abstract design, and something with plenty of plastic. So that's where you need to apply your ink. So you want to make sure that you've got plenty of plastic for that to hang on to. Okay, I'm going to clean up my craft mat quickly here as this is drying, because the next step that I want to do on here is add some more ink to it, because why not? So I'm going to give this a second to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to keep cleaning off my stencil here because we're going to be using it again for something else. So I want to get this beautiful vineyard off of my stencil and give this piece plenty of time to get completely dry. Okay. So yeah, Jill and Avril and Christine and Sue, you like the technique. This is a favorite of mine with lots of the stencils because it gives you the reverse of the image, and it does just allow you to do something a little bit different with your stencils, which is great. Okay, I think I've got that cleaned off as much as possible. So I'm going to set that aside. Now here's a technique I know you've seen me do it lots and lots of times, which is my spattering technique. And in this case, I'm going to go with a gray. So I could use a black, or I could use any of the other colors as well. I'm going to do a little bit of evening gray, though. This is a favorite color. Grab my water brush. And then I'm just going to tap this on here. And I like doing this normally with the black, with any of the black dye inks, but sometimes a nice gray is really effective. Okay, and I'm just doing that with a water brush. And then again, I'm kind of clean this up here. Try and get my cleanup process a little bit better here. There we go. So here we've got a beautiful striped effect, some really soft and subtle gray spatters on here. And then when it's time for me to add my die cut flower and leaf on here, I've got a really nice instant background. So again, let's take another look at the card here. And you can see where I had a lot less of the ink going on in the background. So again, you're going to get some different looks every time you do this. I've got my leaves and my filler pieces and my flower on here. And then I've got my stamped A Note of Thanks. And this is just onto a little strip of white cardstock. One thing I want to point out, because I like to use foam tape when I'm adhering my elements down, so it takes a little bit of planning when you're layering things. So I've got this piece and this piece are simply glued right onto my background. And then my two green leaves are on foam tape. And then the flower is also on foam tape. So I've actually got multiple layers going on here, which means that when I glue down this little sentiment that says A Note of Thanks, I need to make sure I've got foam tape over here enough to, create a bit of a level piece so that this isn't kind of sagging in the middle. So just a bit of planning as you're adhering your elements down. And this is just going right up against the edge of the side of this cardstock. And then it's just popped down onto the front of the card. So really simple and easy processes to do. I think it just looks like a really fun combination. And you can see the size and the impact that that beautiful flower will have. So lots of different possibilities with this, I think. Okay, so this is our first card. I've got another one for us today that I want to share with you. And this is a completely different format. So this is a Slimline card. And maybe some of you have been playing with this size and shape of card. So by Slimline, as you can tell, it's tall and slim in comparison to a sort of standard size card. So this one is 8.5 inches by 3.5 inches. So a pretty substantial difference. And it was one that I really had to kind of get used to. I had to figure out where elements were going to go. And of course, which direction do you want things to go, vertically or horizontally? How do you want to play with that? But in this, the crown bloom just worked really perfectly. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to show you another stripy effect on here. This one is not using the stencil, and it's maybe a little bit of a cheat, but I'll show you how to do that because I had somebody asking me about it the other day, and it's truly the simplest thing that you can do. And then we're going to talk about this flower, and then we will also take a look at those leaves, which I think you can see have been heat embossed, which I was really excited about, especially this little piece right here. This just made me super happy. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about the background, which is a really soft and subtle kind of stripy effect here. And this is done with sea glass. And sea glass is a really nice, soft, subtle blue, and it's going to coordinate with the center of my flower here. So I'll demonstrate it for you quickly. This is as easy as it can possibly be. Now, in this case, I'm using one of the little cubes, which, as you can tell, these are some that I use pretty much all the time. I love these because they come in coordinating sets and because they're small and I can store them easily in my overflowing craft area. So it makes a big difference in terms of storage. So the other nice thing is that you can utilize the base of the pad here. And by that, what I mean is the pad is actually raised up off of the plastic base of your ink pad. Sometimes ink pads, they have the pad recessed into the plastic base, so you're not really able to do this technique, but here you can. So what I'm going to do is just simply put this at an angle and kind of scuffle on my stripes. And I did this because it's an 8.5-inch long piece of cardstock to go on my Slimline card. And it was a little bit trickier with the stencil because, of course, the stencil doesn't measure quite that length. And I was trying to realign things and it didn't quite work. And it was just a bit of a challenging day for me. So I thought this is going to be an easier process. So here we've got my scuffly drawn on inked stripes. It's not going to give you a perfect and precise look. It's not even going to give you terribly straight lines, as you can see in contrast, but it will give you a really cool effect. And it's definitely something that can come in handy. And then, of course, it really elongates the lines of your Slimline card as well. Okay, so that's the background, as easy as can be. Now let's take a look at our flower. So for this one, I'm working with some colors that are not always thought of when we think of flowers. So I always like to see vintage shades in with some of the really large blossoms. And in this case, I'm using 2 browns. And this is the hazelnut, that's going to be my lighter color, and then the almond butter, that will be the darker of the 2. And same process as before. I'm going to start with my outline stamp, which is under everything. And I'm going to use the obsidian black for this. And then add the browns in there. And I really do love to see a vintage brown, like teal, in combination with teal or pink. Really just makes me think of a really soft, pretty vintage effect. So again, starting with my black. And then I'll move into that second layer, middle layer. And this one I'm going to do in hazelnut. So again, just need to get this aligned. There we go. And my hazelnut will be my lighter layer. The hazelnut and the almond butter are also in a, like a 4-pack of these coordinating inks. And there's also a vanilla and milk chocolate in the same pack. So if you weren't hungry for sweets before, sorry, you may be now, but it's a really beautiful color combination and one that just works together so nicely. I'm going to get another little bit of ink on here and press that down again. And you can see how that really starts to take form. And grab my detail layer here. And this one I'm going to do with almond butter. And once again, get this placed and scooched around. And pop in my almond butter here, so the darker of the two. Yeah, Sue, you agree on the slimline cards. I love them, but it did take me a while. It was like, I really got to rethink this, which is great for your creativity, is trying something new. Even if it's just a new shape of card, it can sometimes be a bit more challenging than you expect. Okay, there it is with the almond butter on here. Now, again, I could leave this as it is, but I want a little bit more color in the center. I want another nice contrast. So I'm going to take this main piece here, and I'm going to coordinate it with my stripy background, which was with sea glass, which is that really pretty soft light blue. So here's my sea glass again. I've had this ink pad for such a long time. It's one of my favorites. And pop this down. And light blue and the brown together. So there's as much as I'm going to go on with the flower. Now, again, I could come in and add that second layer for the center and really get some detail in there, but I kind of figured this was good to go. So this is the flower with those beautiful browns, kind of vintage browns, and that soft, pretty blue. So now while we've got the Misty out and we've got some white cardstock, again, let me grab some of this. Let's get into those leaves. Talk about how to do the leaves. So the leaves are all embossed. I've done the outline, as you can see here. I've also done that second layer. Now, this can kind of stand alone as its own leaf, especially when you die cut it. That will give it even more form. And then I've also got this little piece in here. So I'm going to grab the leaves, and I'm just going to do them in one go. Okay, so that's this leaf. And then I've got my second leaf here and my little innie bit. We'll get this all together. May as well just do them all together. Okay, so to do this, as many of you know, you're going to need to have a couple of things on hand. The first being some embossing ink. So I'm going to be using the Altenews Clear Embossing Ink. Got that on hand. I need my embossing powder. And in this case, I'll be working with the rose gold, which is one of my favorites. I also need to have on hand a piece of scrap paper. That's going to catch my excess embossing powder. And of course, my heat tool. So I have all of these things ready to go so that I can work pretty quickly, because you do need to work pretty quickly when you're doing heat embossing. Okay. I re-inked my embossing ink pad, so I can hear it kind of squishing as I'm stamping this down. Okay, and I should be able to kind of see, just to double check that I've got my surface covered. Let's see, one more little bit here. And then again, working pretty quickly, I'm going to pop this open and add my embossing powder. Now you can dump this all on here because of course I'm going to be able to funnel any excess back into the jar with this piece of scrap paper. Okay, so there you can see that this just embosses beautifully, and so does this little element here too. And this looks gorgeous. I think that's absolutely stunning. I'm going to try and tap off any excess and then just return the rest of my powder back into the jar. Okay, I'll set that aside. Be sure and get the lid on. I always have to remind myself out loud. It will only take one time of having the jar to your embossing powder open and then turning on your heat tool to make you never do that again, because that powder can go everywhere. as many of you may know. Okay, get these pulled off and set this aside. And then if you want to give me just a couple of seconds, I'm going to heat set this and we'll take a look. Okay, so I've got all of my foliage on here embossed. I think this looks really, really pretty. And actually what you could do is stamp and emboss a complete background and then do maybe some ink blending on top of this. Now in the case of these leaves, I just die cut them and let them be gold on white. I didn't color in anything. I didn't think it needed to be done. I thought just keeping that coordinating blue, sea glass blue with the background and the flower center was effective enough and still keeping things quite simple. Now on that stripy background, I added my kind thanks going across here, that sentiment from the stamp set. And then I wrapped this bottom piece with a little bit of gold embroidery thread. So lots of you know that I'm kind of addicted to this embroidery thread. It matches perfectly with the gold embossing. And this is the Enchanted Gold embroidery thread from Altenew, of course. And I've just wrapped it around here twice and then added a little bow on here as well, and then layered up my various elements. So again, I've got some foam tape in use here with these elements. These are all on one layer of foam tape. And then this piece here is also on an additional layer of foam tape. So I've got some dimension going on here, which really helps to create some space in between those various elements. So there's our second card, and I really do, I have to love that beautiful embossing on. I think it is just a gorgeous look. Okay, I have one more project to show you tonight. Well, actually, I've got two more. I've got one more to demo for you, and then another one that I want to show you. So this one here is taking the flower in a slightly different direction, and I'll show you a variation of this as well. I won't demo it, but I'll just show it to you so you can see the contrast. So here you'll notice I've got black outline here, and I've got some teal going on in the center. And for this, I'm working with the sea glass and the Caribbean sky. So those two beautiful blues in there. And I've also got a background, that same stripy stencil in there. And this time I'm going to be doing it slightly different way. So once again, I'm going to grab my stencil. We'll start with the background. And I'll get a piece of white cardstock. I'm hoping that this is clean enough for the purposes today. We'll give it a try. And I'm just going to tap this down here. You can tape it onto your work surface if you want to. I'm going to live dangerously and just hold it in place. So for this one, I'm going to work with my Caribbean Sky blue ink and also one of the blending tools. Now, this one I tend to use a lot for greens, as you can tell. It's stained. It's clean, but it's stained, which can happen. So I have a couple of these, and I generally like to keep like one that is just for blues and greens and another one that is for pinks and reds. And then that way I don't have to worry about them getting too contaminated. So all I need to do is get my ink onto my brush. I'm going to hold this down, and I'm just going to stroke this along here in the direction of the stripes. So don't, go crazy in lots of different directions. You need to go with the flow of the plastic. That's going to make it easier. I'll make it easier if I have that on this side. Okay, and there we go. So I'm going to lift this up and we'll take a look. I think you can see it's still looking a bit faint. What I'm going to do is add a slightly darker color. Let's go with some Aqualicious here. Now I wish I had a third hand and I wish I taped it down, but you live and you learn. Okay, so here's the Aqualicious. Let's add some of this color in here and I think you'll be able to see it a little bit better. Okay. And then when I lift this off, there we go, you can see it much better. You've got that beautiful soft color on there. You've got the crisp lines of the stencil. I really like how it kind of fades off into the either end here so that you've got a stronger color in the center. Of course, you can keep that color consistency all around in here if you want to. Beautiful colors, and don't forget you can start with a lighter color and pick up a darker one if you want to, if you need a little bit more saturation on there. And then all you need to do is just click your little blender brush back into the holder and you won't have a dirty brush rolling around on your work surface. Sounds like a small thing, but it really does make a big difference. So you can set that off to one side and it won't get everywhere. Now on my original card, I also added some spattering on here too, like we did with the first one. So again, same process. You may go with a darker, it looks like I used black on here, but you could certainly go with that evening gray if you wanted to as well. Okay, I'm going to show you the flower, just stamping this pretty quickly because by now you're practically an expert on this crown bloom and the stamping process. And you can see that it gets quicker and quicker and quicker as you go. And the more often you do it, the more, the easier it becomes. Okay, I'm going to find my outline piece here. And we've been working with the obsidian black, which is again what I'm going to use here. Let me shift some things around here. And then we're going to bring back in our blues. It's hard for me not to stamp a flower for a live without working in some of the aquas and the blues. I just think they're beautiful colors. So again, starting with our outline. And pop that off to one side. And then I'm going to come in with my second layer. And this one, I'm going to work with sea glass. So that beautiful light color. And ink that up. Probably do 2 rounds with that. Okay, that looks really pretty. And maybe just a little bit more. And again, just as you're working with these, you can consider lots of different stopping points. If you're in a hurry or if you like the look of that, you can just leave it like this. Again, add a little sentiment or die cut that piece and you could call it good. This is the beauty of Altenews. They give you lots and lots of possibilities with each one of their stamps. Okay, so I'm still gonna go for it though and add in another layer. And this one, I'm gonna do the Caribbean sky or Caribbean, depending on how you pronounce it. And we'll get some detail in here with this. Now in this case, I'm not going to do the flower center at all. So this is this last layer that I'm going to do on this. You can see how it's going to give me a really soft and pretty effect. Now this is a little bit different than the one I did because I was using Aqualicious to do the outside detail on this. So you can see you can go from quite soft and subtle to something a little bit bolder here. Lots again of options once again, which is what I love. I like being able to explore different ways that we can put our stamp sets to use. It really does give them a longer shelf life, certainly for crafters. Okay, so this is my flower and this is my background. All I need to do is pop in a few elements that I've done with black. So the 2 leaves here and then my little flower cluster here, and I'm ready to go. I'm also using some of the sequins from Altenew. These are the satin white sequins. And I like these because you've got a large and a medium and a little tiny baby one too. Now the other card that I wanted to show you, because I know we're kind of wrapping up here toward the end, is the same kind of color combination, but instead of using black to do my outline stamps, I used that evening gray. So in this case, I'm able to get a super soft look for not only my leaves and my little filler piece here, but also for this element. So same colors except for the outline. And again, I just like to be able to play with different color combinations because I think it can get you lots and lots of different looks and effects. So, okay, tonight we have been busy with our round bloom. We're going to be wrapping things up. It's just been almost an hour, so we're heading toward the wrap-up portion of this. I'm going to whiz through the stamps that we're using and also show you again some of the cards that we did. So now would be a great time. If you have not shared tonight's video, go ahead and do it now. Got a couple more minutes. And let me show you once again in my pile of things here, the stamps that we're working with. The Crown Bloom stamp set. We also utilized, or I did earlier, the Crown Bloom die set. And this is really where when you want to do some layering and you want to have some elements coming up with some foam tape and a bit more dimension, or you want to kind of position things here, especially on the Slimline card, then having the dies really does make a difference. It means that you don't have to fussy cut around those edges, which I don't want to do around this piece in particular. It just does make it a whole lot easier. So you've got your nice, big, beautiful flowers, the die set, the sentiments that I used for all of my cards tonight are the Many Thanks stamp set. And this one is an oldie but a goodie. It's one that I pull out almost every time I'm doing a thank you card, because not only are you getting like thanks, thank you, and some casual script, you're also getting sentiments like grateful for you, forever grateful, we appreciate you, I appreciate you, can't thank you enough. So lots of different ways to say thank you on here, which is great. And last but not least, we've got 2 pieces in 2 different places. The Beach Towel Stripes stencil, which is going to allow you to create some really different effects. You can do something like this. You can also do something with a more subtle effect. I'm sure there are lots and lots of ways to use this stencil that I haven't even thought of. But this is, again, one that I tend to pull out over and over again. And it's just a great, versatile design. Okay, now I'm going to whiz through the cards that we've been working on tonight, starting with our first one with all of our colors, all of our layering, all of our stripey stencils and spattering, pretty much everything in one card. And yet I still love the effect of this. I think the stamp set is just a big winner for me. Then don't forget, you can put your embossing skills to use, and we use the rose gold for this, for the leaves and the filler piece, and then some browns and a nice little pop of blue in there in the flower center. Again, we've got our thank you and my scuffly ink pad stripey technique on here. And then our third card, utilizing again, the stencil with our blending tool, and then popping in just some black and white imagery going on here in the background with some blue to stand out as well. So a little bit of contrast there. And then just Another way of looking at basically the same color formation. Here you've got it with gray on your leaves and in the center of your flower as well. So 4 different ways to use the Crown Blooms flower set. I'm going to switch up the camera again so that I can say goodbye to you in person as much as we can do these days. And to say a big thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. We always love to see some new faces and new friends, and then some friends that join us all the time. We love to see you guys week in and week out. So really, really grateful that you are joining us for these. I do appreciate your time. Thank you so much to Kathleen for being the magic behind the button today. Always appreciate that, and great to have her along as well. So I'm going to say good night to you all, or good morning again, depending on where you are in the world. And I will catch you again, not next week. Next week I'm doing a class for Altenew and one of their Zoom classes, but then I've got some lives coming up after that. So we will see each other again very soon. Okay, everybody, take good care, stay safe and healthy, and I will catch you again next time. Good night.